Decisional Minimalism for Productivity and Self-Care. Let me know if you're tuning in live. Leave a comment, and I'd love to see that and hear from you and know what you're thinking as we go along today. I will try to keep an eye on those comments. So we're here today to talk about a particular strategy that I believe can make a big difference in your overall stress level, in the amount of energy you have left at the end of the day, and really in how much work you get done with the energy that you have for a given day. See, every night we go to bed, we get some rest, we get recharged for the next day, and we're kind of like literally recharging our batteries, right? There's a lot of research that's come out in the last 20 years that has shown that our mental energy really does work in some respects like a battery for the day that gets recharged at night. So in some sense, there's a very real capacity that we have, and that when that capacity runs out, we start to feel it, right? If you've ever gone through the day, done a lot of work, gone to a lot of meetings, made a lot of decisions, answered a lot of emails, you get to dinner time and you think, okay, what are we gonna have for dinner? What do I wanna do tonight? What do I wanna, eat for dinner before I wrap up the day? And you just can't even decide, right? You're just like, I just don't even care. I can't even think about it. Somebody else decide because I am done. Have you ever had that feeling at the end of a long day? Give me a yes in the comments if that has applied to you, if you experience that frequently, especially after a tough day. And what we're going to talk about today is how to avoid that feeling or how to minimize that feeling with a strategy called decisional minimalism. And that brings us to our essential question for today. How can we make fewer and better decisions in order to get more done in less time while reducing our stress and sense of overwhelm? That is what we are focusing on today. And I'm going to share some research with you as to why this is such a common feeling in our profession, right? If you are a teacher, certainly, if you are an administrator, if you work in K-12 education in any way, if you're at work, you are going to be exhausted by the end of the day, right? And of course, there are lots of different factors that contribute to that normal feeling of exhaustion at the end of the day. First of all is, if we're not getting enough rest, that's going to contribute, obviously. But this is also a very demanding job physically, right? You probably get your 10,000 steps in most days when you're walking around campus, or if you're in the classroom or in some sort of other role that puts you in different places around campus. You probably do quite a bit of walking, and that's fatiguing. I don't know if you do any like lifting of heavy weights, maybe not, but just the physical movement and those demands on our bodies can certainly wear us out. And then, of course, there's just this sense of kind of being on, talking to people all day, maybe after several weeks of being mostly on your own, maybe mostly just with your own family. If we're in that intense school environment again, and everybody is talking to us all the time, like there's just an emotional demand that creates. But there's something else that really explains a lot of kind of the hidden drain on our mental energy. And it's something that Roy Baumeister, a distinguished psychology researcher, calls decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is the concept that we're going to use today to understand why this is such a difficult job emotionally, why this is such a difficult job from an energy perspective, and then what we can do about those demands that are placed on us to set ourselves up for success and preserve more of that mental energy for the work that truly needs it. Because there probably are some places where we're wasting some of it, and we can fix that without impacting our effectiveness in what we're here to do. So the source material for what we're talking about today is Roy Baumeister's 2012 book, Willpower: Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength. And in that book, he makes a case based on very strong evidence from his psychology research and the research of others that mental energy is a real thing, that it is a real concept that, we use it as kind of a metaphor. We say, oh, I'm just dead today. I'm just drained today. My batteries are dead. I'm dragging. My energy is low. And he has actually explained in this book the biological underpinnings of that. A lot of it has to do with glucose levels in your brain, which is why so many people reach for a snack when they're feeling kind of drained. That's why it's so tempting to grab a pack of M&Ms or have some jelly beans or, whatever your default source of sugar is. The reason that sugar feels good in the immediate term, bad for you long term, but in the immediate term, it gets glucose to your brain and kind of temporarily recharges those batteries. Now, we know we can't just eat sugar all day to get through the day, or we will very quickly have major consequences. So we have to look for other ways to keep that energy up. But I wanted to start by identifying some of the factors that draw down that energy. And of course, physical exertion, we talked about walking and just kind of being on all day, emotional self-regulation, dealing with other people who are dysregulated, dealing with conflict, keeping a straight face when somebody's being mean to you and not overreacting. Like just that self-regulation takes a lot out of us. Obviously being tired, we mentioned that, low blood sugar, you've got to eat meals, you've got to eat healthy. That makes a big difference. But what we're going to talk about today is this last factor. And this is a little bit of a sleeper. This is a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people because it doesn't make a lot of intuitive sense. But it makes sense if you consider that the decision-making organ of the body is the brain. And the brain runs on glucose, and the brain draws on a common store of energy with everything else. So if you have been regulating your emotions and running around and physically getting tired, but also making a lot of decisions, that is going to drain those batteries. So this key strategy that we're going to talk about today, I'm going to give you 4 specific ways to do this. The key strategy is to simply make fewer decisions in a day. And you might say, well, that's great, but how am I going to get through the day and get my work done and be there for people and do my job without making those decisions that I need to make? Right? So like an obvious strategy would be you can avoid making decisions by simply putting them off. Ignore it, just don't deal with it, procrastinate, say you'll deal with it tomorrow. But obviously that's not going to get us very far. So the 4 strategies we're going to talk about today are following habits or policies. A policy is basically an organizational habit. A habit is basically a personal policy. So that's one big strategy for reducing decisions. Using saved replies or stock phrases. So, if somebody asks us a question, we can save our answer to them. And then when somebody else asks us the same question tomorrow, we can use that same answer. We can literally copy and paste into a text message or an email or whatever. Or if they're asking us face to face, we can just have that kind of in the back of our minds as a rehearsed, known answer. And that's the kind of thing that, like older, more experienced educators do. You can kind of predict, if you've worked with somebody for a long time, you can kind of predict what they're going to say when you ask them a given question. And that's actually, by design on their part. And it's actually a really good strategy that you can use even if you're brand new to a role. Third, we can empower others, which we'll talk about just briefly. And then fourth, from a productivity standpoint, we can avoid needless categorizing, which has some big implications for how we handle email and paperwork and some of the other, not real critical things, but very high volume and therefore very consequential things that show up in our work. So let's talk first about having consistent policies and replies, because I know you are going to get thousands of questions a week, right? I don't know if you remember your first year of teaching. Do you remember being a new teacher and just, trying to figure out, your students and trying to figure out your curriculum and your classroom and where do we keep the stapler and what do we do if this happens? What do we do if that happens? The first couple of weeks of school, especially if it's a new role or if you move to a new subject or grade level, they're just exhausting. And I remember very clearly in my first year of teaching actually falling asleep on the floor, just kind of slumped against the couch on a Friday after my first week of teaching, just drained, no illicit substances were involved. It was just sheer that, the drain of the job. I literally fell asleep on the couch at 5 o'clock in the evening on a Friday. And if you've ever experienced that feeling, you know exactly what I mean. The number of questions that we get asked in a given day, especially at the beginning of the school year, is just mind-boggling. So one of the first things we can do to try to get that under control is to start to look for the patterns and say, you know what, not every question is completely unique, even if the specific details of that question might vary a little bit. They might be a little bit unique, but it's a type of question that I'm going to be asked again. And it's helpful to think systematically about our responses so that we can be more consistent, but also so that we can reuse some of that. For example, If a parent comes to you and says, hey, my kid told me that their teacher told them that blah, 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 and I'm just not okay with that. What are you going to do about it? Well, most administrators would say, well, I'm not going to first do anything about it. The first step is for you to talk with the teacher directly, not go based on what your kid told you. You need to not come to me first. You need to go and talk to the teacher. So what you might say is something like this. You've probably written an email like this or responded verbally to someone like this. And what I would encourage you to do is actually just save this on your computer so you can copy and paste. Thank you for letting me know about this. Happy to help. But I also know that if I get too involved too early, that can kind of escalate things. As a first step, could you talk to the teacher about this and then follow up with me? Happy to help based on the outcome of that conversation. Now, it'll probably take you 30 seconds or a minute to type that out, but once you do, if you go the extra step of saving it in a place where you can reuse it, then that's a 30-second investment of time that will pay off over and over and over again, right? You're going to answer that person anyway. Why not take just the slight additional step of saving that response so you can use it again? Now, what you don't have to do is create a Word document and then title it, parent has complaint about teacher, but has only heard it from, you don't have to make up this big file name and make up a folder to put it in and all that. We don't need to overcomplicate this. There are lots of little apps that can help with this. One that I've been using recently is called the Copied app. I believe this is for Mac and iPhone, COPIED. And it's real easy to just swipe on your phone. In fact, once you install the app, if you just open the app, it'll save whatever you have on your clipboard. It could not be simpler. So if you type a reply to someone on your phone, copy it to the clipboard, open the app, and boom, it's saved there, and then you can use it again later. You probably will not end up with thousands of these, so you don't even really need to name them. You can just kind of scroll and be like, okay, where's the one about the parent who had a complaint based on what the student said but didn't talk to, you'll be able to find these really easily. So don't make this more complicated than it needs to. And once you type something and save it in there, you can use it over and over again. Like I put this one in my Copied app. If somebody asks me something over text, if somebody texts me, I don't really want you to text me about stuff that I have to do later because I'm not going to follow up on my texts, email me. So I have one that says, sure thing, can you email me so I don't lose track of this? And then I go into the app, I swipe it, and then copy and paste it and reply back to them. Very, very quick, very, very easy way to be more consistent, to make it a personal policy, and to save yourself the typing. Now, for a broader kind of general purpose app for this, I love Evernote. Evernote works on every device. You can use it to take your meeting notes. You can use it to take a picture of a whiteboard. It reads handwriting. You can save audio. It really does everything. I've been using Evernote for more than a decade, so that's my main recommendation. It's very searchable. So in general, I would try to save stuff in Evernote, but Copied is also really good for your iPhone. So this works in two ways to help you get more done and to reduce your stress by reducing the number of decisions you have to make. First of all, it saves the duplicated effort of having to type the same thing over and over again. And second, it encourages you to think more systematically. Even if the people are different, even if the situation has some unique features, when you train yourself to look for those patterns and say, what is this an example of? What are my leadership principles and beliefs that are baked into my response that I want to be consistent about so that I treat everyone fairly, so that I treat everyone the same way? And then I can listen with empathy. I can treat that person as unique. I can treat their situation as unique as a way of just responding to them. But my actual reply is going to be pretty consistent from one situation to the next. All right, so that is the first big strategy, having personal policies and kind of saved replies for questions. The second strategy for decisional minimalism, our philosophy to reduce our stress and get more done, is to eliminate needless categorizing. Needless categorizing happens in lots of little ways that are easy to ignore, easy to overlook that you're doing this, but we do it all the time. I got an email, I need to get it out of my inbox. Which folder do I put it in? I see that question literally every week in principal Facebook groups. People say, I've got all these emails. Where do I file them? And I actually have in the Copied app. This is actually why I started using this particular app. I have some little tips on this that I saved in my app, and I can paste in Facebook anytime somebody asks about it. But I see a lot of efforts out there to categorize emails and say, okay, I need to put all these emails into folders. And my answer to that is no, you don't. just archive, right? I've been using Gmail for like 17 years now, and it has a nice button that allows you to get an email out of your inbox without deleting it and without having to decide which folder do I put this in. You just hit that archive button and it's out of your inbox, and you can get on with your day without making a decision. Now, here's what Baumeister's research found about those little tiny, dinky, inconsequential decisions like, what folder do I put this email in? Baumeister's research found that making that kind of inconsequential decision still uses mental energy, just as if you were making a high-stakes decision like, do I, renew this teacher or not? Now, obviously, there's more process involved in that, but the decision itself uses the same amount of energy, whether it's an important decision or an unimportant decision. And I'm going to guess that you get several hundred emails a week, maybe several hundred a day. And if you are making a decision about where to file and organize and sort every one of those emails, that is hundreds of decisions a week that you don't actually need to make about which folder it goes in. It's an extra step that we can eliminate. We also do this with paper, right? If you have a big file cabinet in your office, you can make lots of folders for every single little thing you ever go to or every single topic that ever comes up. Or you can get a cardboard box, which I call the chronological file. I gave it a fancy name so that you'd have permission to use it as a system, even though it's just a cardboard box. Anytime you have something on your desk that you need to keep, but you don't need it on your desk, you just kind of want to file it away, throw it in that box, and it becomes what I call a chronological file. And the newer stuff is on the top, the older stuff is further down, and if you need to find something, you can just kind of dig back down, and you'll see the different layers. Oh yeah, here's the stuff from last week, here's the stuff from last month, I'm getting close, oh, there it is. It's actually much faster than searching through paper files that you've categorized in some way. Because here's the thing, when you categorize something into these ultra-specific files, I think at one point I probably had like 400 file folders in this huge wall-sized file cabinet. Not only do you have to make a decision about which folder do I put this in, or do I need to get my label maker? I've got a label maker handy. I've got 2 label makers. I'm very, fond of making folders, but I realized that it's not really necessary. I don't really need all these folders because not only does it take time on the front end, I'm actually going to have to reconstruct that decision with 100% accuracy later to find it. And it's much easier to just throw the stuff in a box. I don't have to reconstruct my decision. I just have to think, okay, when was that? I just go dig in the box. And of course, if we're talking about something electronic, it's even easier. We can just do a search. But even for paper, we do not have to do this excessive organization and categorization. Now, of course, it's still helpful to be somewhat organized. Like, you can't go through life and work with just a junk drawer approach to everything. We need a little bit of organization. So I want to encourage you to think about this in terms of kind of dresser drawer categorization. And I am not a, organize the socks by pattern kind of person. Like, if this is what your sock drawer looks like, great for you, but like, it's probably a lot of work to maintain that system. I want to know which drawer to throw my socks in, but I don't want to then like arrange them within that drawer. So like, I need to know where it goes, but I don't want to put any more effort into the system than that, because like, that's not the purpose of my life, to organize my socks. And this applies to just about anything. One example that I encountered immediately when I started as an elementary principal was discipline referrals. I discovered that there was this file cabinet for discipline referrals, and it had every single student who had ever gotten a discipline referral with their own folder, and then most of the folders only had one thing in them, but there are all these folders that took all this time and all this space. I said, you know what, I'm just going to make one folder for discipline referrals. There are also electronic records, so if I need to search by student, I can do that and see a history. But for the most part, these are all going to go in one folder. So that broader categorization, the reason this saves mental energy is that you can do it by habit. I don't have to think, where do I put this discipline referral? Because it's one of my broad categories. I know it can go in that folder, and I don't really have to think about it, and I won't have to reconstruct that decision painstakingly later. So minimal organization, minimal categorization, keep it simple and don't overcomplicate it for yourself. You're saving yourself mental energy. The third strategy we're going to talk about today in the theme of decisional minimalism is empowering others. Sometimes we are stressed out, we are tired, we are exhausted, we are overworked and overwhelmed because we're making decisions that don't really need to be left up to us. Sometimes we could simply share the criteria that we use anyway for making those decisions and say, hey, everybody, a lot of people have been asking me about this and trying to get my permission for field trips, for example. And I'm getting a ton of questions. People are trying to run all this stuff by me. And look, my decision-making process for this is pretty simple. And you lay out, okay, here are the criteria for the field trip or whatever thing you're being asked to approve. Tell other people, look, if these are the criteria that trip meets, I'm going to approve it. If not, I'm not going to approve it. So you don't need to like run it by me over and over and over again with all these modifications. Like, just fill out the form and you know if it meets the criteria and I'll sign off on it. And what we're doing there by empowering other people is we're eliminating ourselves as the bottleneck. This is why we teach our students routines and procedures at the beginning of the school year. So they don't come up to you and ask, I'm done with my work, where do I put my paper? Like, that's a great question to get asked on the first day of school. But if students are asking that question in the 6th week of school, like, something has gone wrong, right? We need to share that process with other people so that they can handle more themselves and not depend on us. Now, a word of caution about empowering others. I think where we tend to miss opportunities for empowering others is where we feel needed. We feel like we're contributing because we're good at that particular process or that particular decision. So I want to challenge you, if you feel like there's just nothing you could let go of, are you getting a certain maybe feel-good reward from helping people with that? You know, oh, they come to me with their problem and I help them fix it and it feels great. If you are not the best person to do that, if they could solve that problem themselves and leave you out of it, that will be better for everyone, even if it no longer serves as a source of validation or, you know, feeling good for you. All right, let's talk about decisional minimalism in your personal life. We talked about habits and policies a little bit. I just want to point out that all of this applies to stuff at home, to stuff with your family, to stuff in your personal life, as well as everything that you do at work. So things like, what am I going to have for dinner? If you cannot decide what to have for dinner at 6 o'clock because you're so wiped out, no problem. Decide on Sunday what you're going to have for dinner on Wednesday. There is no reason that you have to make these decisions in real time. And there's also no real reason that they have to be unique decisions. I personally would be totally happy to be a Taco Tuesday kind of guy. If it's Tuesday, I'm going to eat tacos. I would be happy to eat tacos every Tuesday for the rest of my life. Absolutely no complaint. So if I eliminate that decision from my life permanently, then that's more energy that I have every Tuesday for other things that need my attention. If you don't like that, that particular approach, you could build in some variety by subscribing to a meal kit service. You could get your Blue Apron or your HelloFresh or whatever. You could subscribe to a recipe site that tells you, hey, this week on Thursday, you're going to make this salad and that's going to be your dinner. Great. I don't have to think about it. That sounds fabulous to me. You could also buy meals. There are meal prep services in almost every community. I live in a very small town and we have a meal prep service here where they will give you, 10 lunches or 7 lunches for the week and you don't have to think about it. If it's not a big deal to you, try not to make decisions about it, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life. If it is something that you do have to make a decision about, look for a way to make that decision in advance. And we know this, right? Like, this is why you lay out your outfit the night before. You don't wake up and think, oh, where's this, where's that? I can't find it. We do it the night before because that's a better time to do that planning and to get everything arranged. You don't want to be in a rush in the morning. And to whatever extent those decisions can repeat, right? If you have a particular outfit that works well together, wear that same outfit. Don't think, okay, which shoes do I need to wear with this? Like, that's not a decision we need to make over and over again. And we can get more consistent. We can get the variety that we want with a little bit of planning and intentionality. So all of these things that we've talked about today seem very small individually. And because they individually seem small, they seem like they're not very consequential. But what I want you to take away from this discussion is that cumulatively, all of these small decisions add up to a pretty significant impact on our ability to get through the day with the energy we need to do the work that we've got to get done. So look for ways to practice decisional minimalism, to follow habits, to follow policies, to use saved replies and stock phrases, to empower others to make decisions for themselves, and to avoid needless categorizing. If we're over categorizing, if we're involving ourselves in things we don't need to be involved in, if we're thinking up unique replies to every email that comes in, if we're deciding on a new way to do everything every time it comes up, we are not going to have the energy we need to do our best work on behalf of students. So let me know what you think about this. Let me know what examples you are coming up with when it comes to decisional minimalism, and I will talk to you soon. That is it for episode 73 of the Instructional Leadership Show, Decisional Minimalism for Productivity and Self-Care. Thanks so much for tuning in, and